Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are glad you are here with us.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we're doing something a little different. We're broadcasting as part of the Funeral Channel network, which means we're turning our lens toward a subject that is, well, it's often whispered about or handled behind closed doors. But it's actually one of the most universal experiences we have as human beings. We're looking at the intersection of grief, technology, and design.
It's a fascinating intersection, and honestly, it's one that doesn't get enough analytical attention. We tend to silo these things.
How do you mean?
Well, usually we treat grief as purely emotional, a psychological state, and we treat design as purely aesthetic or, commercial. But when you crash those two things together, when you have this profound human emotion meeting practical necessity, the results can be really, really profound.
Exactly. And honestly, it starts with a problem that I think everyone recognizes, even if they haven't quite put words to it.
Right.
You're at a service, or worse, you're the one playing the service.
Right.
And you hit this wall. It's the wall of language.
The inadequacy of words. It's a phenomenon that has plagued poets and philosophers for centuries. But for a grieving family, it's not philosophical at all. It's visceral.
Right. Grief arrives, and it often arrives without language.
Yeah.
You're searching for a way to say, I love you, or goodbye, or thank you for everything. And the words just feel small. They feel flat compared to the overwhelming, crushing weight of the loss.
You say, I'm sorry for your loss, and it feels like a hollow coin.
It does. And there's a real neurological reason for that, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very common psychological experience. When we're in a state of high emotional arousal, specifically acute grief, the language centers of our brain, like Broca's area, can actually become inhibited.
So you're literally speechless.
You literally struggle to formulate the narrative of what you're feeling. And so historically, when humans run out of words, what do? We turn to symbols. We turn to objects. We need something tangible to bridge that gap.
Which brings us to the focus of today's deep dive. We're looking at a specific source titled Crafting Remembrance, DIY Memorial Butterfly Pins via Canva.
Now, on the surface, that sounds like, a simple craft project.
Right, like something you'd find on Pinterest. But the mission here is to explore how a tiny object, a little butterfly pin, can actually bridge that huge gap between the speechlessness of grief and the very human need to connect.
And it's not just about the pin itself, it's about the shift in how we're making these things. We're moving away from what I would call passive mourning.
Passive mourning. What's that?
That's where you just buy a standard package from a funeral home catalog, you point and pick, you're a consumer. What we're seeing now is a shift toward active participation, the rise of DIY remembrance.
And the tech angle is huge here. We're talking about Canva. We're talking about how tools that were once reserved for professional graphic designers are now letting grieving families take control of the aesthetic of their goodbye.
It's the democratization of design, and it's being applied to the most sensitive moment of our lives. It's about reclaiming the ritual.
So here is our roadmap for this deep dive. We have a lot of ground to cover to really understand this shift. First, we're going to unpack the symbolism of the butterfly. Why that insect? Why is it the icon of choice over, say, a dove or a rose?
Then we'll get into the rise of the DIY movement in funerals, which is driven by technology, but also by, frankly, economics.
Absolutely. Then we'll talk about the therapeutic value of actually making these things with your own hands, the psychology of the maker.
And finally, we're going to do a very practical, granular walkthrough of how to design one of these pins based on the source material.
And we'll wrap up by looking at the pen as a ritual object, how it functions during the service, and maybe more importantly, what happens to it long after the service is over.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, let's jump into the symbol. The butterfly. It is everywhere in memorial culture now. You see it on urns, on programs, on headstones. But why? Is it? Is it just because they're pretty?
It's a fair question, but no. The source material is very clear on this, and it aligns with a ton of what we know about cultural anthropology. It's not just about aesthetics. The butterfly is the ultimate icon of transformation.
It's the life cycle, right? It's almost too perfect a metaphor.
It is, but let's really break down the biology to understand the theology or the spiritual resonance. You have the caterpillar.
The earthly existence.
Exactly. It's ground-bound, it consumes, it lives a very physical, heavy life, it crawls. It represents our time here in this form.
And then comes the chrysalis, the cocoon.
The chrysalis.
Yeah.
This represents the transition. In the context of death, it represents the passing, the stillness. To an outside observer, a cocoon looks inert. It looks dead.
Right. There's no movement. Nothing seems to be happening.
But inside, and this is the absolute key, it is not dead. It is liquefying. It is completely reorganizing. It's a vessel for the most radical change imaginable. It's a process of becoming.
And then, obviously, the emergence.
Mm-hmm.
The winged creature.
And the source notes that for many families, this represents the soul's transition. It represents spiritual freedom, the continuation of life beyond the physical presence.
It's a very hopeful symbol, isn't it?
So hopeful. It says, this is not an end. It is a change of state, which is a much gentler way to frame loss.
That is the word that jumped out at me. Hope. Because if you compare the butterfly to other traditional symbols, let's think about the Victorian era.
Oh, yes.
You had the tombstone, the weeping willow, the urn draped in cloth, or even the broken column.
Those are heavy symbols. They are static. The broken column literally symbolizes a life cut short. It is tragic. It emphasizes the loss of the physical body, the finality of it. It pulls your eyes down to the grave.
Whereas the butterfly?
The butterfly conveys gentleness, it conveys movement, it's light, and crucially, it flies upward. It pulls your eyes to the sky. It suggests ascension, release.
The source makes a great point about celebration of life services. We're seeing a massive shift in terminology in the industry, aren't we? People are having fewer funerals and more celebrations of life?
Absolutely. The language is changing, and the aesthetic has to match that shift. It's a fundamental rebranding of the ritual of farewell.
And if you're calling it a celebration of life, you don't necessarily want heavy, dark, Victorian mourning imagery. You don't want black crepe and limestone.
No, that would be a complete mismatch. You want something that suggests the spirit is free. The butterfly fits that tone perfectly because it's beautiful, it's fleeting, and it's vibrant. It acknowledges the beauty of the life that was lived.
There's also an interesting point in the source here about inclusivity. We live in a world that is, well, it's increasingly secular, or at least religiously diverse.
This is critical in our modern context. A family is rarely religiously monolithic anymore.
Right, you might have a service where you have a devout Catholic grandmother, a secular atheist grandchild, a Buddhist cousin, and friends from all walks of life, all in one room.
And if you choose a symbol that is heavily dogmatic, like a specific crucifix or a Star of David, while it might be perfectly appropriate for the deceased, it might not resonate as a shared symbol for the entire audience. It can create a distance.
You're not all on the same page.
Exactly. The butterfly transcends specific religious traditions. It works for a secular service because it's a natural phenomenon. It's just nature doing its thing. We all understand the biology.
But it also works for spiritual gathering.
Beautifully, because it represents the soul or spirit or consciousness, whatever term you're comfortable with. It allows for a shared symbol without imposing a specific theological dogma.
It's a unifier, a sort of diplomatic symbol.
It is. It lowers the barrier to entry for shared mourning. Everyone can look at a butterfly and understand the sentiment of change and beauty, regardless of what they believe happens after we die. It allows the entire room to be on the same page, emotionally.
So we have this perfect symbol. But the question is, how do we get it into people's hands? This is where the deep dive takes a turn into the practical realities of the modern funeral.
Right.
The source talks about the rise of DIY memorial keepsakes.
And we have to be honest about the drivers here. There are two main forces at work. One is emotional, which we'll get to, but the other is very practical, money and time.
Funerals are expensive. I think everyone knows that in theory, but until you're planning one, you don't realize how expensive.
Exceptionally so. The costs for everything, from the service itself to the printing of materials, are rising. At the same time, the source mentions compressed timelines.
This is a huge one.
You often have only a few days to pull a service together. Between the date of death and the service, you might have 72, maybe 96 hours. It's a sprint.
So the do-it-yourself shift is partly a survival mechanism.
In a way, yes. If you can create meaningful tributes yourself without paying a premium for a specialized printing company to rush order them, that relieves a huge financial and logistical burden.
But historically, that was hard, right?
Right.
If you didn't have design skills, your DIY program looked DIY.
It looked like a Word document with clip art.
Yes, we've all seen those. And there's a certain sadness to them, not because of the death, but because they feel inadequate to the person they're honoring.
Precisely. And that's where the technology shift comes in. The source specifically highlights Canva. Now, we talk about Canva a lot in the business world for marketing, but I hadn't really considered its impact on the funeral industry.
It's about the accessibility revolution.
No.
The source points out that Canva provides pre-built templates, drag-and-drop tools, But here's the deep insight from the expert perspective. It's about cognitive load.
This is the crucial psychological concept here. This is everything.
Unpack that for us. Why does cognitive load matter so much when you're mourning?
Okay, so when you are grieving, your brain is functioning differently. We call it grief brain for a reason. Biologically, your limbic system, the emotional center, is on fire. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, planning, complex sequencing, and learning new things, is effectively compromised.
It's just not working at full capacity.
Not even close. It's being flooded with stress hormones. So asking someone in that state to navigate a complex professional design software interface
Like Photoshop or InDesign.
is like asking someone to solve a calculus problem while they're being chased by a bear. It is physiologically incongruent with their state. You cannot learn Photoshop 3 days after a loved one dies. You'll get frustrated, you'll crash, and you'll give up.
So accessibility is absolutely crucial here. The interface needs to be intuitive.
It needs to require low cognitive effort. Canva works because it's visual and modular. It uses a principle called recognition rather than recall. You don't have to remember where a tool is. You see a butterfly, you drag it over, you click the text, you type the name. It removes the friction.
The friction between the feeling you want to express and the actual production of the object.
Yes, and that empowerment is vital. When you lose someone, you feel a total loss of control. Death is the ultimate loss of control. The universe has taken something from you and you couldn't stop it.
And being able to control the aesthetic of the memorial.
To say, no, I want this shade of blue because it was her favorite, and then making it happen yourself with your own hands, that reclaims a tiny bit of agency.
It's a small victory in a time of overwhelming defeat.
Exactly. The source also mentions support systems like the funeral program site.
Right. Because even with easy tools, you might still need some guidance. You might not know where to start.
These organizations play a really important bridging role. They offer the templates or the education. It's a hybrid model. You get the professional foundation, the template, but you get the personal execution, the DIY customization.
So you're not stuck from a blank page.
Never, ever start from a blank page when you're grieving. That is too intimidating. The blank page syndrome creates anxiety. You start with a structure and you fill it with your love.
I love that. Fill with your love. Which actually leads us perfectly into the next section, the emotional and therapeutic value of creating.
This is where we move from product to process. We often focus on the result, the finished pin itself. But the source argues, and I completely agree, that the value isn't just in the finished pin. The real value is in the hour you spend making it.
The source describes designing as a gentle creative outlet.
That word gentle is key. This isn't a high-pressure work project with a deadline. It's a quiet, focused activity.
It creates a moment of focus, doesn't it? Because funeral planning is chaos. The phone is ringing constantly. Neighbors are bringing casseroles. There's paperwork. There are insurance calls.
It is absolute chaos. Your home becomes a command center. But sitting down to design a pin, even for 30 minutes, creates a bubble of silence. It offers a moment of intention.
You're just focusing on one thing.
You're focusing entirely on the name of the loved one, on the colors that represented them. It is a form of mindfulness, really, but it's rooted in memory.
And it often isn't a solo activity. The source talks about this as a shared family experience.
This is one of the most beautiful and, I think, underrated aspects of DIY memorialization. Imagine the scene. You have the immediate family, maybe some cousins or close friends, all sitting around a kitchen table.
Right.
Maybe the kids are helping to choose the butterfly image from the options on the screen. Maybe the teenagers are handling the computer part. The older generation is helping assemble the pin backs when they're printed.
It gives everyone a job, a role to play.
It gives everyone a purpose. But more importantly, it facilitates conversation. When you're busy with your hands cutting, pasting, clicking, it's so much easier to talk. We call this side-by-side interaction.
You're not just staring at each other across a table crying. You're both looking at the project.
Exactly. Direct eye contact can be very intense when you're that vulnerable. This takes the pressure off. It creates a space for quiet conversations and shared memories. You might share a funny story about the deceased while you're adjusting the font size.
Or shed a tear while you're pinning the backing on.
And it happens organically. It fosters connection at a time when families can feel very fragmented by grief.
And it shifts the mental focus.
Yes. The source puts it beautifully. It shifts the mind from mourning what has ended to honoring what remains. It's an act of legacy building. You are literally constructing a vessel for the love and impact of the person who passed.
It turns the grief into something physical. You're taking that internal pain, which is invisible and just hurts, and you're externalizing it into a beautiful object you can hold.
Which is a fundamental mechanism of healing. You are making the intangible tangible.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. We have listeners who might be in this position right now, or will be someday. The source gives a very practical deep dive on how to actually design these pins.
Right.
So let's walk through the steps because there are some traps you can fall into if you aren't careful.
Definitely. Step 1 is template selection.
And the keyword search is pretty straightforward, I assume.
Butterfly, memorial, sympathy, in loving memory, you'll get a ton of results. But the source gives a crucial design tip here. Simplicity is key.
Because these things are small.
They are tiny, 1 to 2 inches. That's smaller than a sticky note. If you choose a template with a complex Baroque background and 14 different design elements, it's just going to look like a muddy blob when you print it at 1 inch.
So you need clean lines, high contrast.
Exactly. Look for layouts with a lot of negative space. Let the elements breathe.
Okay, so you find a simple template. Step 2 is customizing. This is the personal touch.
This is where you bring your loved one into the design. Adjusting the palette is a big one. And this is where you can and should break away from tradition. If the person loved bright neon pink, use neon pink.
Don't feel beholden to somber colors.
Not at all. If the person wasn't somber, the tribute shouldn't be either. Use their favorite colors. And make sure the butterfly graphic is prominent. It is the hero of the design, not an afterthought.
Step 3 is the hardest part, I think. Text strategy.
It really is. The challenge of constraints. You have a 1-inch circle. You cannot write a eulogy on a button.
You could barely write a sentence.
You really can't. The source recommends strictly limiting the text. Just a name. John Smith. Or maybe a short phrase like, in loving memory. Or just the dates.
Or a single symbolic word, forever. Peace, mama.
And here's the expert takeaway. Legibility is more important than poetry here.
That's a great line.
If you try to cram a beautiful, meaningful poem onto a pin, no one can read it, and it loses all its impact. You want someone to be able to glance at your lapel from a few feet away and see the name. You want instant recognition.
Okay, so steps 4 and 5 are production, sizing and printing.
This is the technical part, but it's not hard. You have to size the canvas correctly in Canva. Don't design it as a big poster and then try to shrink it down.
Oh, yeah.
You'll lose resolution, and the proportions of the text might get distorted. Start with the right size, set your canvas to 1.5 inches or 2 inches, and when you export at high resolution, that means 300 dpi if possible, or select the print quality PDF option.
And then printing on cardstock or sticker paper.
What?
And assembly.
This is where the physical labor comes in. You can buy little pin backs online or at any craft store, but there is a vital, life-saving quality control tip in the source.
I have a feeling I know what this is.
Test 1 before you print 100.
Oh, that is the golden rule of printing.
It is. Colors look different on a backlit screen than they do on paper. Your screen shines light through the color. Paper reflects light off the color. Your soft lavender on screen might come out looking like a dull gray on paper.
And your text might be too small to read once it's actually printed.
Exactly. Print one. Cut it out. Pin it to your shirt. Hold it in your hand. Look at it from a distance. Does it work?
It saves so much heartache and wasted ink.
And stress. The last thing you need is 100 unusable pins the night before the service. That kind of stress can break you when you're already fragile.
Okay. So you've made the pins, the family has gathered, you've had that therapeutic session. Now comes the day of the service. Section 5. The pin as a ritual object.
This is where the object activates.
I love that idea. The object activates. Explain that.
It goes from being a craft project to a piece of social currency. Think about the visual impact. You walk into a room, it's a sad occasion, but you look around, and on every lapel, on every dress, there is this small, colorful butterfly.
It creates a visual expression of unity.
It does. Instantly. It says, we are all here for the same reason. We are all holding the same weight. It connects the room before anyone even says a word.
And even if you don't know the person standing across from you, maybe it's a work colleague you've never met, you see the pin, and there's a silent acknowledgement of shared support.
It creates a tribe of mourners for the day.
And it is so much better than a paper program, isn't it? I mean, I've been to so many services where you get the program and honestly, you don't know what to do with it afterwards. It gets crumpled in a pocket or left on the pew.
A pin is wearable, and because it's wearable, it feels like an adornment. It's an act of choice. It's an act of honoring the person by wearing their name over your heart.
And it's a gift.
Yes, this is so important. It's an act of care from the family to the attendees. It's the family saying, we know you are hurting too. Here is something to hold on to.
Especially for those people we talked about at the very beginning, the ones who struggle with words.
The ones who stand in the back and don't know what to say to the widow or the children. The pin gives them a connection point. They can put it on, and by putting it on, they are participating in the memorial without having to give a speech. It facilitates nonverbal participation.
And then the service ends. People go home. But the pin stays.
This is the long-term legacy. This is where it gets really interesting. Where did these pins go?
Memory boxes.
Memory boards, pinned to the visor of a car. They get put on a backpack, they end up on a winter coat, and stay there for the whole season.
They enter the ecosystem of daily life.
Exactly. And over time, the meaning of the pin evolves. During the service, it's about the grief. It's about the goodbye. But 6 mech later, when you see that butterfly on your bulletin board, it's about the relationship.
It's a little hello.
It's a little hello. It's a trigger for a positive memory. It remembers the person, but it also remembers the event of the memorial. And for the family who made them, it remembers that late night session where they sat around the table and made them together.
So the handcrafted nature adds another layer of value.
It's not a factory-made trinket. It's an artifact of love, an artifact of a specific moment in time.
It's amazing how much meaning can be packed into a 1-inch circle of paper and plastic.
That's the power of symbols, and that's the power of ritual. We imbue these objects with meaning because we need them to carry the weight for us.
So let's synthesize this. We started with the problem of speechlessness, of grief stealing our words. We found a solution in a symbol of transformation, the butterfly. We used modern tech Canva to make creating that symbol accessible to everyone.
We found healing in the process of making it, not just the product.
And we created a ritual object that unites people during the service and serves as a keepsake for years to come.
It's a journey from the paralysis of grief to the agency of creation. That's the core arc here. You go from, I can't do anything about this death, to, I can make something beautiful to honor this life.
And that agency is so, so important.
In a time defined by uncertainty and powerlessness, making something with your own hands is a profound act of control and care.
And thanks to the democratization of these design tools, anyone can do it. You don't need a degree in graphic design. You just need the intent.
It allows the tribute to be professional enough to be respectful, but personal enough to be real. It hits that perfect sweet spot.
I want to leave our listeners with a thought that really struck me while reading this source. We live in such a digital world. We have online memorial pages, we have Facebook tributes, virtual candles.
Everything is becoming an online experience.
Right. And yet we're seeing this surge in tangible objects, in things you can hold.
It does raise a provocative question about the future of mourning, doesn't it? As we become more digital, why are we gravitating toward things we can touch?
Maybe, and this is just a thought, but maybe because in a virtual world that can feel so ephemeral, we need something we can physically hold to prove that the love and the loss was real.
We need the weight of it in our hands. Pixels don't have weight. A pin does. We're physical beings, and at the end of the day, we crave physical proof.
To the learner listening today, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Whether you're in the middle of planning a service or just curious about how humans handle the big stuff, we hope this gave you a new perspective on the little butterfly pin.
It's a small thing, but it carries a very heavy load.
Take care, everyone. We will catch you on the next deep dive.